Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes with this government, though, we don't know whether to laugh or cry when it comes to the way they spend money. This minister said in her fall update that the budget would be balanced in 2028. In her budget, she said it would be balanced never. Weeks before that budget, she said that deficit spending fuels inflation and interest rate hikes. Then she added $60 billion of that fuel to the inflationary fire at a cost to $4,200 per family. Why won't the minister get off the backs of the hardworking Canadians and get rid of the inflationary taxes and deficits that they have to pay?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, these Conservatives continue to relentlessly talk down Canada and the Canadian economy. But on this side of the House, we believe in Canada, and we know that Canada has the best economic performance of any country in the G7. And, Mr. Speaker, let me give you some facts to back that up. After we tabled the budget, S&P reiterated our AAA credit rating. That makes Canada one of only 3 countries in the G7 with a AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. 2.5.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The minister herself said that in fall, that the budget would be balanced in 2028. In this budget, she stated the budget would never be balanced. And before the budget, she said that deficits put oil on the inflationary fire and added $60 billion worth of that oil. That means over $4,000 of debt for every Canadian. Why do Canadians have to pay for the incompetence and change of minds of this government? The Honourable Deputy Minister.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, it's important to understand the data and to understand that Canada is a G7 country that has the strongest economy. I will give you some facts to support that. For example, our country's economic growth in the first quarter was 2.4%. Mr. Speaker, Canada has recovered 129% of jobs lost during the pandemic and 115% in the United States. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. We see that she and the Prime Minister are completely disconnected from the daily reality of everyday Canadians, and we see why. He left the country, has been avoiding questions about the unpopular budget. In American universities, has gone to American universities instead of talking to people here. She's the one who admitted that deficits feed inflation and that she was going to find $1 of savings for every $1 of spending. Where's that promise in the budget implementation? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, last week, I was very proud to be in Japan at the meeting of G7 finance ministers. It's important for Canadians to understand that the Conservatives may think that Canada's finance minister shouldn't go to international meetings. If that's what the Conservatives think, they have to tell the truth to Canadians. About the Canadian economy, we have the strongest G7 economy, thanks to Canadians' work in our government. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Impressive that the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister are attending really important meetings in Japan and the United States with really important people around the world. We're talking to the common people right here in Canada who can't pay their bills, Mr. Speaker. 1 in 5 skipping meals because they can't afford the inflationary carbon tax on food. 1.5 million eating at food banks, some asking for help with medical assistance and dying because they can't afford to eat, heat, or house themselves. The minister admits deficits cause this inflation, yet she added 60 billion more of them. Why does she keep boosting prices while she travels abroad?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's be really clear on what the Conservatives are insinuating. The Conservatives are trying to insinuate today that there is something elitist, that there is something that goes against the interests of regular Canadians when Canadian leaders attend G7 meetings. And I want to ask Canadians, do they think it is wrong for the Prime Minister to go to a meeting with the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Prime Minister of Japan?
Leader of the Opposition.
No, we just wish he'd remember that the real people who pay the bills actually live right here in Canada. That Liberals forget about when they're jet-setting around the world, when this deputy minister is over in the States giving speeches at fancy American universities. She's forgetting about the people who are paying 12% more for food because of her carbon tax, forgetting 9 in 10 young people can't afford a home because she's driven up interest rates so much with her deficits, and forgetting the seniors that can't fill their fridges because food has become too expensive. Why won't she and her Prime Minister get back on the ground in Canada and stand up for the people who do the work here?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, someone who lives in government-provided accommodation in a multi-room residence with a chef and a chauffeur, and someone who has been on the public payroll his entire professional life should not suggest that our government is acting against the interests of Canadians when we attend meetings of the G7. We are proud to represent Canada at the top table in the world, and we're going to continue to do that.
A year ago, the finance minister said she had a red line. Our debt to GDP ratio must continue to decline, the finance minister said. Pandemic debt must be paid down. This is a line we will not cross. So much for that red line. The government has increased the debt by $4,200 for each Canadian family. Our debt to GDP ratio will increase this year, and deficits now extend as far out as the eye can see. Does the finance minister regret making this cast-in-stone, stone-cold promise to Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
When it comes to Canada's debt and debt to GDP ratio, let me quote someone that all members of this House should trust, and that is the Parliamentary Budget Officer. At the Finance Committee a few weeks ago, he said, when looking at G7 countries, Canada compares very favorably on net debt to GDP. Further in his testimony, he described a conversation he had with Moody's, who said that Canada's deficit should make us, quote, quite happy because by European standards, that's very low. That's not me talking, Mr. Speaker. That's the Parliamentary Budget Officer.
The Honourable Member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, this finance minister and government have quite a bad track record of making predictions. They told us interest rates would remain low, so we must spend. They told us that deflation was more likely than inflation. And when inflation came, they said it would just be here for a little while. The minister assured us the economy would continue to grow, and now it's slowed to a halt. They're always playing catch up, and Canadians are paying the price. We are now spending as much on interest on the debt as we are sending to provinces for health care. How can Canadians afford any more of this government?
Good. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you who pays the price for conservative economic policies. The people who pay the price for conservative so-called economics are the most vulnerable among us. Since we formed government, Mr. Speaker, 2.7 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty. Our government introduced the CCB, which has lifted more than 400,000 children out of poverty, and the GIS, which has helped over 900,000 seniors. We believe in a balance between compassion and fiscal responsibility, and that's what...
If I could just ask the front benches to maybe lead the example for the rear benches, I think that would probably help things quite a bit. The honourable member for Peterborough-Kawartha.
The finance minister's inflationary budget is costing each Canadian family $4,200. Yet she said, and I quote, "We are absolutely determined that our debt to GDP ratio must continue to decline. Our deficits must continue to be reduced. This is a line we shall not cross." So she clearly understands her government deficits are driving up inflation, interest rates, and affordability, yet she doubles down on them. So I'll give her a chance one more time today. Will she finally listen to her own advice and cut this inflationary spending?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, here's the question the Conservatives have to answer. They have to tell Canadians what they would cut.
That's right.
Would they cut the $200 billion that we have invested in the healthcare system? I sure hope not, because Canadians rely on our healthcare system, and they are proud of the federal government that is supporting it. I want to ask, would they cut the $300 billion we've invested in early learning and childcare? Again, I think they kind of want to cut that. I sure hope they never form government. This party doesn't, because you know what? Canadian families need that support that we are providing.